I would like to start by asking you, as a person who monitors NATO's activity on the eastern flank and the development of various security programs, whether Poland's reaction to what is happening on the part of Belarus is excessive, or is it too late? And how can the deployment of the divisions of the Polish army on the border with Belarus be perceived in Moscow, in Minsk? The main signals are coming from the Kremlin. So this is a reaction to the deployment of this division, because you know that there are Russian troops on the territory of Belarus, there were Wagner bases, there are allegedly nuclear weapons 200 kilometers from the border with Ukraine, among other things. Only a week ago, military exercises with the participation of the Chinese People's Liberation Army were held in Belarus for the first time, and Chinese army units were on the territory of Belarus, directly on the border with Poland. Special units of North Korea was also involved in the exercise for the first time, so Poland's reaction is absolutely adequate, as well as other Baltic countries. Estonia has decided to build 500 pillboxes along the border with Russia immediately. To build an impenetrable line of border protection and to build fortifications in case Russia does launch an aggression. All countries are preparing. No one believes that these are redundant actions. These are actions in response to the aggressive, ill-considered provocative actions of the Russian Federation with the Belarusian puppet Lukashenko. So everything is correct. It was probably necessary to take such actions earlier, but it's good that the Poles are reacting quite adequately now. Moving on to NATO and Ukraine, there's recent news about the appointment of NATO's senior special representative for Ukraine, Patrick Turner, announced by Jens Stoltenberg. This appointment aims to coordinate all alliance actions with Ukraine and will oversee defense assistance processes. What functions will this special representative have? Who is this person? What is known about? It was in pursuance of the NATO summit decision that a special representative was appointed to Ukraine to coordinate all civilian political coordination, military assistance, security and defense sector reforms, and financial administration. And this is Patrick Turner, who was the personal assistant to NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg in recent years. This is a kind of Kurt Walker for Ukraine, who was at one time, if anyone remembers, from 2017 to 2019, he was the U.S. permanent representative to Ukraine, and he was President Trump's special representative at that time, who coordinated and determined everything that was necessary for Ukraine. Another question is how the White House reacted to what Kurt Walker reported. But he was our partner, our ally, our friend, and he helped Ukraine a lot. And so did this Patrick Turner, who is a civilian, not a military man, but who has a lot of experience. He is British, as I said. He worked in the NATO office, in NATO headquarters. He is aware of the whole situation of the last decade. We hope that he, like all experienced British leaders, will be our ally, helping us determine Ukraine's needs for weapons and funding, including the 40 billion euros allocated for 2025 at the NATO summit. That will be provided as military aid to Ukraine. I would also like to clarify that there was a news story that Germany is cutting financial aid to Ukraine next year. This is partly correct, but there is a nuance here. The fact is that we know how in 2024 for 6 months, the United States could not accept $61 billion in funding for Ukraine. And the delay took place until May. So at that time, Ukraine had to be helped somehow, and all NATO allies asked at that time that the lack of American aid be replaced with funding from Germany, and then the share would be reduced when the Americans unblocked this financial aid. All funding for Ukraine for 2025 has now been unblocked, and for 2024, and now each country pays not some abstract amount, but the equivalent of a percentage of its GDP. And of course, in this standard situation, when there are no more delays in providing assistance to Ukraine, Germany will give Ukraine not less, but exactly as much as is determined as a percentage of GDP. As for all NATO countries who help us, this is a simple clarification and adjustment of the amount. And the actual changes in the approaches of different NATO members to financing their defense are also related to the political struggle in the United States. The probability of Trump coming to power and winning the presidential election this fall is very high. What do you think will happen now? The summit in Washington has obviously shown this course of change in the approaches of many NATO members. Attitude to the alliance, to the financing of its defense capabilities, and so on. How can the situation develop further, given the latest developments in the United States and indeed the status of Donald Trump's favorite in this election? Trump's election as President of the United States is a challenge and a danger, not only for the United States and Ukraine, but also for the entire world. Even in Taiwan, you can see that the first step that Trump took before he even became president, he immediately said, "We will put Taiwan on the meter." I'm using a metaphor. It will pay us for the security provided by the United States of America for the island of Taiwan. Trump even said something like this: "We are not particularly interested in Taiwan, and we do not owe it anything. It is an island that is thousands of miles away from the American coast." Trump seems to have forgotten that Taiwan produces the most technologically advanced microchips in the world, and they are used by the United States, its technology companies, and the defense industry. But in his populist comment, he negated all merit and all cooperation with Taiwan, which had been going on for decades, and it was hard to imagine such political myopia. Well, Mr. Andriy, I have to tell you, our viewers, my personal point of view, we have to understand that Trump is an absolute degenerate in the literal sense. Not because I am calling anyone names or want to humiliate anyone, but because he's an inexperienced person. He acts on instinct. He takes a woman and does whatever he wants with her. He buys someone, sells someone, betrays someone. He has no principles. He says that he is some kind of believer. He serves exclusively for himself and at most for Russia. And that's why this is a great danger. This is the American Yanukovych. We had a Yanukovych like Azarov, and now the United States has its own Trump and Jay Divins, who is a complete copy of Trump. A clone of Trump, as Biden said about Divins, that he is a clone of Trump. This is an absolutely terrible era of politicians coming to power who will lead to the destruction of the geopolitical significance, dimension, and recognition of the authority of the United States of America. They are destroying everything that was created before them for centuries in the United States, starting with Wilson, the winner of the First World War, Reagan, and up to the present day. He destroys everything. He has no standards. That is why this is a huge danger, and he is already saying that he is most likely to believe that the sanctions imposed by the United States and NATO, the EU, and Ramstein against Russia are having a very bad effect on us, and that is why we should lift the sanctions against Russia. This is a person who works only for Russia, who does everything to free Putin from sanctions for the further destruction of Ukraine. Therefore, in this context, there is a huge danger for Ukraine. He is literally a threat to Ukraine's national security and defense. And Ukraine should prepare today for a possible hypothetical transition of Trump to power. If the Democrats, Biden, does not recognize that the situation in the United States has finally changed over the past 2 or 3 weeks, starting with the unsuccessful debate between Biden and Trump. The excesses of the assassination attempt on Trump, which resulted in a rise in his political dividends in the relevant circles of the American political electorate, have increased his ratings slightly. This is not to say that he has grown catastrophically there, and so on, but Biden has definitely not gained any ground. And against this background, the Democrats should put forward a new candidate before it is too late. Nancy Pelosi has quietly whispered in Biden's ears that he will not be able to outplay and defeat Trump in any opinion polls, and he will bring Trump to power by his stubbornness without withdrawing his candidacy or offering another. Now, I also read on Twitter last night that in the United States there were opinion polls of key Democratic politicians who could hypothetically be a replacement, a plan B, in case Biden does withdraw, and they all win. These 4 candidates beat Trump according to the results of the American opinion poll by the firm that conducted this study, which was commissioned to do this. This suggests that Trump's chances of winning are high, but not inevitable. And if the Americans, Democrats, can agree to withdraw Biden's candidacy, Biden himself convinces himself, and his family convinces him to withdraw and put forward another candidate, it is likely that a new, younger politician in the 50s, 60s, known, popular among Democrats, may well cope with this threat. And wins against Trump, because the Republicans themselves are not delighted with Trump, even more so with Divins. Divins did not add votes to Trump and the Republicans. Many are disappointed with this choice of Divins as vice president. Therefore, we need to fight to the end, like Ukraine, have a chance to win. The main thing is not to give up and make adjustments in time. We are definitely not going to give up, regardless of the turmoil that will take place in the United States around the election. Ukraine has already emerged from difficult situations in unity, strength, and we are heading for victory. Mr. Yuriy, I'm very grateful to you for frank, emotional conversation, and we have analyzed not only the situation around NATO and relations with Ukraine, but even the American elections. We talked about the American political situation, and Yuriy Romanyuk was with us on Channel 24.